All right, we're live on YouTube now.
All right, I guess I see Chuck and John and Matt. Haven't heard that Mark would not be joining us, but given that we have a quorum, why don't we call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock, the Franklin Township Planning Commission meeting, October 6th. First order of business is public comment. Being none, looking at approval for September 1, 2022 minutes. Hopefully we all had a chance to go over them. The most recent draft, Jeff, was sent out this morning. I didn't get a chance to see what John sent, but I'm hoping it was the same one. John, if you're trying to make a comment, you're on mute.
I was trying to make a comment also. I was on mute. This is Chuck. So I had a comment under the section solar ordinance discussion, the second paragraph. It says non-residential or business solar array would be a primary use, and we'll go through the conditional use process for approval and decommissioning. We did not say that it would be non-residential or business. We said primary use solar arrays will go through the conditional use. So I'd like to have that first section strucken and add solar arrays after use.
Read the sentence the way you want it, Chuck.
I would like it to read, primary use solar arrays will go through the conditional use process for approval and decommissioning.
Okay, if everyone else agrees, someone could just say so moved.
I just made that change and I agree with it. I move to accept the minutes with the change.
I second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the September 1st Planning Commission minutes with the noted change by Chuck Phillips, seconded by John. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Moving on to the next order of business. Already lost my agenda, but I believe it is the Richardson subdivision plan. We have a letter
Correct.
from our township engineer dated September 26, 2022. I understand that Mr. Crossan is not in attendance today.
No, but Wendy Richardson is, and then there is a Mr. Abernathy. I'm not sure who Mr. Abernathy is. He may be here for Wendy tonight. I don't know.
Yes, good evening, members of the commission. My name is Bob Abernathy. I'm an attorney in Kennett Square, and I represent Miss Wendy Richardson.
Typically, Mr. Abernathy and Ms. Richardson, we would have the engineer or designer for the applicant reviewing this letter and the letter of September 26th and commenting on the comments made by Mr. Eisenbrown. Do you care to make any comments on that letter?
The only thing that I would ask about, I guess, I don't know if it's a comment necessarily, but I did note that the second general comment on the letter notes that the plan reflects ground conditions on lot 3, including an extensive area of stone milling recently added. behind existing garage. That the zoning officer saw that there was no evidence of stormwater management or grading permits issued, which would have been required. It's more of a question. I'm just wondering if the planning commission is taking any position on that. It just doesn't seem to be related to this lot line change plan that we have here.
So, hopefully you've had a chance to review August and September meeting minutes, and that the prior plan that was originally submitted did not show these millings on the plan. And as typical for reviewing a plan, our engineer visited the site and saw the millings and asked the designer how to ask them to address those millings, in which case the plan was resubmitted showing the millings. So the planning commission was presented with a plan with no improvements in that area of the millings, and then showed the impervious improvements with no stormwater management. So from a planning commission standpoint, we have a plan and then a revised plan that shows improvements. We asked the engineer, or we asked the code enforcement officer to review to see if there were any permits issued between the two plans or prior to the first plan, and there were no records of that. Reviewing the difference between the two plans with our solicitor, there's a chance tonight that we would recommend the plan with a condition that those improvements would need to be, stormwater would need to be addressed at some point before the plan could be recorded.
So, okay, so if I understand the planning commission's position is potentially that this separate issue with the millings that were put down is going to be required to be addressed as a condition of approval for this lot line change. Is that correct?
We haven't had a chance as a planning commission to discuss it in detail.
Understood.
So that's our opportunity right now. Reviewing Pete Eisenbrown's letter of September 26th, the requested waivers are waivers that we've discussed previously, and I think the planning commission was all in favor of that. The other items,
Dave, can I interject? Right.
sure.
So I think that we would request an awful lot more if this stormwater issue is not going to be taken care of, because we're at this point, things like the exact topography, which was taken, which is not accurate, was not surveyed. Items like that, where there's a lot of unknowns with all this additional work that was done on the second lot, which may affect this development.
Another way of wording what Chuck is saying, when we discussed these originally requested waivers, this was for a lot line change with no improvements, no dwellings being done. But the original premise that we were presented with these waivers was only to move lot lines, correct? Is that correct, Chuck?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Right.
And I believe, I'll just state that our position is that, that still remains the case. This is to move a lot line and nothing more. The millings issue is on lot 3, not lot 2. And, I think we see this as two completely separate issues, in that there's different owners for lot 3. And if there's an issue where stormwater management and or grading needs to be addressed for the area where millings were put down, understood. We want to ensure that is not something that would hold up this lot line change, because again, they're two separate issues and should be addressed separately.
Can Can I get some clarification on the plan? It indicates that Wendy is an owner of both properties. She's listed on under the second property also.
That's correct. She is an owner of both properties, but there is 3 other owners with lot 3 being her mother, father, and her brother. And for that reason, technically, these 2 lots are owned by different people, and that's just one of the reasons that I think that this is these 2 issues are separate. The approval of the lot line adjustment and the question regarding stormwater management and or grading for the area where millings were put down, they should be addressed separately. One should not, the millings issue should not affect the approval of the current plan in front of you, which is just to change a lot line.
Can I ask a question of the Planning Commission? Insofar as this plan now shows changes, improvements to Lot 3, does the recording of this plan with those improvements in place essentially, in fact, record those improvements as accepted by the township?
I asked that question of Pete last month. I'm not sure that I'm not sure. I don't know. We'd have to look at the tape to see what he said.
Yeah, I was not able to attend last month. My
Yeah.
apologies.
I was concerned also. What happens? Are we accepting that as soon as we say this is a new lot, because it's
Right.
documented.
So to try to paraphrase some of the emails that have transpired up until tonight, we are, the Planning Commission is an advisory board or commission. We are not an enforcement part of the township. But now that this impervious surface is known to the township should, and I believe will, address the enforcement of this impervious surface not having stormwater. Whether that's not at the Planning Commission level. It would either be at the board or by the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. And I do understand that, and I understand if the township is taking the position that they're going to enforce that issue, that's completely understandable. All I'm trying to convey to the commission this evening is that I don't think that should hold up a recommendation that this lot line adjustment be approved, or that this should hold up what we're trying to accomplish here, which is, again, just a lot line adjustment. I think that there's a proceeding for enforcement. It's laid out in the ordinance. It's laid out in the MPC. There's a procedure there that can be followed separately. And I understand the commission's concern about the recording of the plan, but I just wanted to make sure that our position on that is clear, that they're 2 separate things, and certainly enforcement can still happen, but separately.
Dave, am I wrong? And we can make that a condition that everything be brought up to current laws.
Yes. There again, we're making a recommendation with a recommended condition. As a planning commission, I would hope that the supervisors would consider that condition and all of its implications, and that the question that Paul and that you, Chuck, both are concerned about is if we allow a plan to be recorded, somehow I would think we'd have to have it recorded with a note if the condition isn't addressed before the plan being recorded. I can't answer for supervisors, but I would hope they'd want a plan that's clean, recorded.
Mhm.
Well, isn't there another issue, Dave, in that currently the owners of Lot 3 are not in compliance with our township, state, county, federal regulations as far as stormwater management? And I would think that that property would have to be in compliance before we would allow this thing to go through to the well, we can allow it to go through conditionally upon that being fixed. But I would think the supervisors would want to hold up until that property was in compliance before it's allowed to be subdivided. So it's a question of, do you allow a property that's not in compliance with federal, state, county, and municipal regulations to subdivide before the subdivision goes through? I personally would not like that. You
Maybe
understand
I'm
that?
saying it a different way, but that's what I was trying to get at, John, and that's what the suggested condition would be in the motion, that condition would have, the condition is that the stormwater for the millings would be addressed prior to recording.
I would agree with that.
But as far as a planning commission, and I think what Mr. Abernathy is asking is, we've done our review. The letter from P. Brown is to, to the typical or the minimal number of comments in which we've recommended approval with whatever conditions or waivers we're willing to make. Whatever is left on this plan doesn't require further planning commission review.
So I think we're considering moving the plan forward to the supervisors under the condition that the stormwater issues are resolved before the plan is approved and recorded. Is that what I think we're saying? By the
Yes.
supervisors.
And then with that condition, we would be recommending the requested original waivers.
Right.
With that condition in the motion.
So just for clarification, if that condition's in exchange for approving the waivers?
No, I would not say it's an exchange. That your original proposal was for a lot line change with no improvements. Now we have a plan that has improvements that only became obvious during this review process.
Understood. Yeah, my only remaining question is just, I think the standard for imposing conditions, especially at this level, is reasonableness. I don't, again, because they're two separate issues, I don't see how imposing this as a condition for approval of this lot line change can be seen as reasonable. And I would ask, what specific section of the township ordinance that authority comes from to apply a condition such as this for approval. But I think that's a question that's better asked of the solicitor. So leaving that question out there, I'll leave it at that.
So Dave, not to interject here, but my comment. So Mr. Abernathy, I'm David Gerstenhaber. I'm the chairman of the Board of Supervisors. So while I'm not speaking for the board, but I just want to ask some procedural questions. So we're going to review this. And is the next step then we have another sit down with our solicitor, or is this something that do you feel that we can address during a Board of Supervisors meeting while we are reviewing this lot line change?
Well, I mean, I would think that, the question needs to be asked of the solicitor of whether or not this is a reasonable condition to impose, and whether or not these should be treated as two separate issues and addressed as such.
And just so I understand it, so I can and I can help explain it in the PC. Will
Sure.
I'm sure capture it in their notes. The situation currently is we have properties who are interested in a lot line change. However, they are not in the property has an improvement that is not in compliance with our current stormwater standards.
Correct.
Okay. So, all right, I understand. Thank you.
Yeah, Dave, just to be a little more precise, I would say the situation here is that you have two properties that are participating in a lot line change, and one of the properties is out of compliance with township, et cetera, regulations. So it's not the applicant on parcel 2 who is out of compliance with township regulations. As I see it, the applicant's pool area seems to infringe on the second property. So it's important to keep in mind that there are two parcels. The applicant is the owner of one and the part owner of the other. And the second parcel is the parcel that has the problem. Both parcels are participating in the lot line change.
Exactly.
All right, I understand. And what and Mr. Abernathy, you're suggesting that the enforcement of the non-compliance is not connected to the lot line change, period.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they should be treated as two separate issues and dealt with as such.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any more questions from planning commissioners, alternates? Dave?
I lost a little bit of internet there and I didn't hear everything, but is there a concern that what we're about to propose is not allowed by us? And if it is, then I don't think we should propose it. I
The
think we should push it a month.
draft that I asked to be because of the number of requested waivers, the streetlights and sidewalks that we haven't talked about yet, and the general comment being addressed. I did ask our solicitor to review the proposed motion prior to tonight. So it has been reviewed by our solicitor.
So we're comfortable that we were within our regulations or our limitations, what we're allowed to do.
Yes.
Very good.
And the reason that I did it is much because of the number of waivers, and to assist the applicant in moving the process along. In that, like I mentioned, the planning commission is done with its review. The issues outstanding are not a review issue, they're an enforcement issue. Any further discussion on the plan? How about if we discuss whether to recommend sidewalks or streetlights? I'll keep it moving. I'm not in favor of suggesting either.
I agree with you.
I agree.
Dave, the only thing I would note is that in light of the discussions that went forward with the comprehensive plan, that while this is not an appropriate parcel, obviously, for sidewalks. But going forward, we're talking about not merely possibly sidewalks, but creating accessible pedestrian and other pathways. Again, this would not be an appropriate parcel to do that. But I think we do need to keep in mind that the section of the ordinance that talks about sidewalks strictly probably needs to be reviewed to bring it in line with the suggestions on the part of the comprehensive plan.
I think it's a very good point, Paul, because at least in my thoughts in considering sidewalks, trails did come into mind.
Right. I mean, this is essentially a landlocked parcel. It has no frontage that would be used under current circumstances for anybody to get anywhere. So it's sort of out of bounds, if you will, no matter whether you're talking about trails or sidewalks. But I think we need to keep in mind that going forward, even though the current ordinance specifies sidewalks, we may be looking at something different. And streetlights are inappropriate for the same reason.
Any further discussion? Do we feel we're ready to make a motion to recommend the plan to the Board of Supervisors?
Who wants to read a lot?
I'll claim that I don't have very good light.
Okay. All right, I'm going to start off. I make a motion to recommend to the Board of Supervisors that they conditionally approve the final minor subdivision plan for the properties known as lots number 2 and 3 Richardson subdivision plan, last revised September 6th, 2022. The plan with the following waivers and conditions so the properties are in compliance with all federal, state, county, and local regulations. Waivers from section 22-202, the definition of a minor subdivision plan, section 22-502.1L2, and section 22-727.1.B, requiring monuments along the tract boundary and street right-of-way. Losing my voice. Section 22-502.I.L, parenthesis 14, from requiring the location of all existing wells and sewage areas within 100 feet of the property. Section 22-102.1.M, subsection 1, from requiring contour lines from being established by a field survey. Section 22-502.1.M5, the need for delineation of steep slopes. Section 22-502.1.M8, requiring the need for wetland delineation. Section 22-722.11.D. This section requires primary and replacement sewage systems. Is everybody still there?
Yes.
Site design standards. The Franklin Township Planning Commission is recommending that the Board of Supervisors not require the property owners to install sidewalks per section 22-710 and street lighting as per section 711 of the Franklin Township Site Design Standards. The approval is conditioned on the applicant. The approval is conditioned on, and the applicant will, number one, work with the owners of Lot 3 and Franklin Township zoning and code enforcement officer to bring Lot 3 into compliance with all federal, state, county, and local stormwater management regulations as to the stone millings depicted on Lot 3 and complete such work prior to recording the plan. Number two, place the approved waivers on the cover sheet of the plan prior to the plan being recorded by Franklin Township. Number three, have the appropriate notarized signature blocks and signatures for both lots will be required prior to the plan being recorded. Number four, work with the township administrator to keep their escrow account up to date and pay any outstanding invoices the Avon Charter School has with the township, including recording fees.
I
Number-
put, Chuck, there's a little error in there. Strike Avon Grove Charter School and put in Wendy Richardson. Sorry.
Okay, so it should read, number four should read, work with the township administrator to keep their escrow account up to date and pay all outstanding invoices to, or invoices of Wendy Richardson,
Yep,
with
with the township.
the township, including recording fees. Number five, the applicant shall work with the township solicitor, township engineer, and the township operations manager until there is a successful completion of these tasks. Whew.
Yeah. With all that being said, thank you, Chuck. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you,
Strong
Don. Any discussion on the motion? Being no discussion, all in favor of, being no discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say same sign. All right, we'll move it forward to the Board of Supervisors. Moving on to the next agenda item, I believe is public comment.
I actually have a request. We have outstanding proposed minor modifications to the section of the zoning ordinance that established the Historic District Act, or established the Historic District. Sorry, it was originally the Historic District Act. These were presented to the township some time ago by the Historic Commission, and they were set aside first because of time being devoted to the comprehensive plan and other items, but they are minor. Their approval by the supervisors is, I would say, overdue. It was originally going directly to the supervisors, but because the solicitor decided that it should see review by the planning commission should there be any question concerning the changes, most of which involve uses of words like building and structure, and applying those terms consistently throughout the ordinance so that there is no question that the same thing is meant everywhere. If this could be taken up next time and moved along, I don't think this is requires a great deal of thought on the part of the planning commission. I certainly would hope not. Chuck may remember that these things were fairly simple in the main. There may be one issue that Chuck would like to complain about again. But beyond that, and that issue is not really integral to getting these wording changes through. But I would just like to have us in a position where no one can look at our ordinance and say it's inconsistent. Should we find ourselves in a situation like we were concerning 3327 Appleton Road again?
The fence.
So
Or
I think we're fine with that. It's just that the Board of Supervisors need to say that they want it to be reviewed by the PC, correct?
I think that they already did effectively. But if it requires restating, then I will put in a word for the process with the supervisors at the next meeting. It was simply not put on the agenda, is my understanding, because there were other more pressing things, such as the alternative energy ordinance and the amount of time that the planning commission had to devote to the comprehensive plan.
Okay.
So this is the first nudge. I'm going to become a minor nudge, but I thought I'd give you all a heads up. I just like to see this taken care of.
While we're talking about that, did you want to, do we want to do anything more about the sidewalk section to include paths, or to address, how do we want to address that? I don't know of any plans coming down the pike, but I would find out about the same time the other 5 of us or 6 of us that are planning commissions and alternates would find out. So
prior to the approval of the comprehensive plan, I raised an issue in the supervisors meeting toward the end of the comment period, basically saying that I thought there was a somewhat of an inconsistency in the approach of sort of encouraging trails and then not necessarily, I couldn't tell you the exact wording, but there was another part where I thought that it backed away too strongly. It concerned the way the section that originally suggested that the ordinances of the township require pedestrian pathways in the case of a subdivision plan, etc. That was modified. And so I had discussions, and at least some members of the supervisors and Jeff is aware of subsequent discussions after I made my comments. So I believe this will be coming down the pike. And it should, it's not going to be, it may not be a simple issue as such, but Mike, as I pointed out when I was talking about this, one of the problems is that in stating that we require sidewalks, we've taken a hard and fast approach to the sort of trails or pathways that get installed. And so I think there's been a tendency, to say, well, yeah, we're not a sidewalk kind of place, which I don't think you get a lot of disagreement about. But that's not necessarily led to the proposal alternatives. And so, it actually has been raised with some members of with some supervisors, and I've talked to Jeff about this. So it may be that now is the time, if there is not a lot on the agenda going forward for the PC to consider talking about this. But I think the direction should come from the supervisor.
So we'll have a sentence in the minutes indicating that we are in favor of looking at that section of the ordinance. And then Jeff, you'll look into the historic ordinances that Paul's referring to.
Yeah, I'll work with Paul, see where things currently stand. I know Mark Thompson had worked on them. But I'll work with Paul, see where we are, and then we can get that stuff distributed again to the planning commission.
Yeah.
Great. Any other public comment? Being none, have a motion to adjourn or all adjourn at 7:40.
I'll make the motion.
Thanks.
Adjourn.
Thank you,
Good
everyone.
evening, everyone.
Have a nice evening.
Have a good evening, everyone.